My major is international relations, and I'm the SGA treasurer this year.
My name is Michael, class of 2021. I haven't decided my major yet, and I'm the finance chair this year. So this is our current finance committee. We've got Elizabeth, who's our deputy treasurer, myself, the finance chair, Ben and Ebony are our general finance members, and Sierra is our treasurer. Each of us oversees a certain group of clubs. So Elizabeth oversees club sports, so in the position called finance advisors. Each of us is a finance advisor to certain groups of clubs. And that means that you can come to us individually for any assistance you need, rather than going directly to the treasurer to sort of just spread things out. So Elizabeth oversees club sports and varsity performance clubs. I oversee community service, dance, and theme houses. Ben oversees cultural and identity clubs. Ebony oversees academic and educational clubs. And Sierra just oversees the whole thing, and also any clubs where there's a conflict of interest between one of the advisors and the clubs we oversee.
So if you ever forget who your finance advisor is, you can go on Engage, go to your club roster, and it should list the name of your finance advisor, so you don't have to memorize their name or anything. And obviously that doesn't mean you can't come to me. My door is always open, so you can always shoot me an email if you don't know who your finance advisor is, or you just rather come to me. So now we're going to talk about the two areas of funding which are important to you guys. So before I dive into that, I just want to let you guys know about the speaker fund. So the speaker fund is part of SGA, but it's not overseen by myself and the finance committee. It's overseen by the education council chair. So if it's pretty explanatory, so if you have a speaker coming for a club event or a club meeting, you should definitely apply for funding from them. I know that it's super underutilized and they really like getting applications. So that's seen by the Education Council chair. So we don't have one currently, but when we do, they will be looking at applications. So the first funding, which we're going to talk about, is the student activity fee. So that's the most important for you guys. This is where you will be applying for the bulk of your funding. So this is available to all SGA clubs and orgs, so everyone in this room. So whenever you're applying to student activity fee, it's through a funding request and not a purchase request. That's super, super important to keep the two different, and we'll explain the difference between a purchase request and a funding request in a little bit. And the last thing to keep in mind is when you are submitting the funding request application, make sure that your treasurer is the one submitting it. So that doesn't mean that your president and the rest of your exec board can't be part of applying and filling out the application. It just means that you should be the one that's submitting the application. And the reason for that is because if we ever have any questions, you're the person, whoever submitted it is the contact person. So we really want to make sure that the treasurer is on top of their finances and that we're the ones communicating with the treasurer and not someone else on the board.
The other major source of funding is the venture fund. Anyone at Wheaton can apply to the venture fund, groups or individuals. If you're an SGA club that's applying to the venture fund, the only reason you would apply is for travel expenses, taking a bus or gas expenses. However, anyone can, if you're not part of a club, if you're not using it for a club and you're using it for something else, then you can apply for whatever reason. And both the student activity fee and the venture fund are overseen by the finance committee, and we meet weekly to review all the requests we get.
So that doesn't necessarily mean we'll give you a decision within a week's time. It means that we'll have looked over your application, and if we have any questions, we'll have reached out to you within a week. Typically, if we don't have any questions, you're going to get your response in a week, but just to kind of let you guys know. And the other thing is, so I know for me, I always get this confused, so Michael, I'm going to ask again, when would I apply for venture fund if I'm an SGA club?
If you're an SGA club, you'd only apply to venture fund if you need to pay for travel expenses, a bus, a train, a plane, stuff like that. Just getting there.
I'm going to give an example. So if I'm in the Model United Nations team and we're going to a conference in Harvard, what would I apply for funding for from Venture Fund, and what would I apply for funding for from SAF?
Venture Fund would cover if you're carpooling, and you would cover the gas expenses for the cars, or if you're taking a bus or something, it would cover that. And then SAF would cover food or a hotel if you pay for a hotel.
Yeah, and we're not expecting you guys to memorize this or already know that. So if you ever have a question, you're like, ooh, I'm not sure which one to apply to, just feel free to reach out to us and ask us the difference between the two. And all the applications for the education, for the speaker chair, and these are all from Engage. Okay, so now I'm just gonna walk you guys really quickly through how to find it on Engage. So you go onto Engage, you type in your club, you hit manage, and we're gonna use SGA as our example. And then you would hit kind of like the pancake menu button, which will be on the left hand side on the upper corner. Then you'll scroll down, you'll click on the finance button, and then it should take you to this. So after that, you're gonna click on the blue button where it says create new request, and it'll give you an option of a purchase request and a funding request. So super important that you hit funding request and not purchase request. So purchase request is overseen by our student banker. One of them's in the room, so Dalton, you can say hi. And that's for like reimbursements, invoices, contracts, things like that. Whereas funding requests are solely if you want funding from SGA. So really make sure to keep that in mind.
So this is the rubric that the Finance Committee uses to determine whether or not to approve or deny a request. The two big items so there's 14 points altogether, and you need to get 11 points to get the request approved. The two big items are timing and itemization. Timing is like easy to get right, but easy to screw up. It's just that if you're requesting less than $500, we need the request within at least 2 weeks in advance. And if you're requesting more than $500, we need the request at least 4 weeks in advance. That just gives us enough time to like get back to you if you have questions or stuff. And then itemization is on the funding request, you'll submit a budget, and that budget will have all the things you plan to get, how much they are, stuff like that. And what we really need to see is very like detailed descriptions of what you're getting, because that shows us that you actually know what you're getting. Like if you just put food, $200, like do you even know what kind of food you're getting? Because we only know what you tell us. And so we have to see specifically that you know what food you're getting, you know what equipment you're getting, and it also helps us know if you actually need the stuff you're requesting. Like maybe it'd be cheaper to just get catering, or maybe something you're planning on buying is actually available at the roads office. So it helps us to know that you're using the money effectively. Other things are other sources of funding. There will be a section on the funding request that says additional information. If you have money in your club budget already, when you're requesting more money, we need to know that that money already in your club budget is accounted for, and that you have a plan on how to spend that. So in the additional information section, you just tell us what that money is going towards, so that we know that you already have other money in your budget. Cost efficiency, it ties this in with itemization. We just like to make sure that you're buying the items you need and that you're buying them at a reasonable price. And collaboration isn't necessary, of course, but it's something we really like to see and encourage. Clubs collaborating with other clubs or with organizations on campus. It just helps, because collabs tend to do better, honestly, and when you collab with another club, you both have to spend less money, there's more hands on deck to get the work done. It just works out better for everyone.
Yeah, and then with collaborations, really make sure that the treasurers from both of the clubs are really communicating with one another and are aware of the finances. So if you want, you can have both clubs apply for funding for the same event, or you can have one of the clubs apply for funding. And just make sure if only one of the clubs is doing that they're letting us know it's a collaboration. We've already talked to the treasurer, we know that we're just gonna split the cost. The other thing is, so this is new this year, so you guys probably, if you've been treasurers before, you've probably never seen this before. And the reason why we created this is because we really want to be super communicative with you guys, as well as really transparent with this process. And if you ever had a question about why we denied a request, we can really show you and walk you through all the different reasons and the points behind everything. And we want to make sure that we're being super fair and consistent with every single funding request that we're looking at.
So we have a lot of new resources this year for club treasurers. You'll find them all on our new Finance Engage page. That's new this year. So we're going to go to that. And you see you've got our pictures, of course, because why wouldn't you want to look at us? We've got descriptions of who we are and stuff. We've got our office hours. Those are going to be updated sometime next week, because we have our first meeting this Monday where we'll decide when our office hours will be. But those will be updated and sent out in an email to you, so you can always come to us whenever. We also have our newest form is our, what do you call it? Finance Committee feedback form.
Yeah.
We've created this because we want your feedback, because we can't really know what to improve if we don't know what we're doing wrong. And we don't know what to keep if we don't know what we're doing right. So please feel free to fill this out whenever you want to tell us what you think we can improve or what you think we're doing well, so that we know what to keep and what to change.
Yeah, and whenever you submit a funding request and you get a decision about whether it's been approved or denied, we always include this link, so you can also access this link that way as well.
We've also got the documents. We've got this presentation, we've got the flyer we made from Finger Foods with the Finance Committee that we had a while back. Really any documents that we create this year that have any information that you might want, you find on here. So again, you don't have to memorize anything. It's all available on our Engage page.
So now we're going to go into the annual budget part of this presentation. So I know that sounds super daunting, a new annual budget system process. But it's pretty much the same. We've just kind of tweaked the timeline a little bit and just modified it to make it significantly easier for you guys so that this process is much more user-friendly. So I know you guys can all read, so I'll just go really quickly through this. So first, you're going to get an email from me on Monday with the template of the annual budget. So you don't have to create a template. It'll be given to you and you can just fill it out. So you'll get that this coming Monday. Then the week after that, we're going to be doing hands-on annual budget training sessions. So that means we have a handout for you guys on our expectations, our guidelines. We'll walk you through similar criteria to the funding request one, so you guys really know this is what they're looking for, this is how I can get my annual budget approved. After that, we're gonna do all club executive board elections. So this isn't necessarily relating to finance, but it's super important because we wanna make sure that SG is helping with transition. So we wanna make sure that we know that your clubs are transitioning before, fall comes. So after this process, we'll give you guys transition guides and everything like that. And then the idea is the new e-board and the new treasurer will really have a say in what the new annual budget process looks like and in applying for the amount of funds that they want. Because that's really important to make sure that that new treasurer has had a really good say in what the finances are gonna look like for the upcoming year. So we wanna make sure that happens. So after that, March 22nd, we're gonna have a calendar day. So the thing behind this is the current e-board and the new e-board will come together and hopefully map out all your events for the upcoming year. So I know this seems a little bit daunting, but I'm sure most clubs already have quite annual and consistent events, so it shouldn't be too laborious. And all the e-boards will come together and you guys will all put down your dates for your different events. And our hope with this, with programming, is just to make things a lot smoother and make sure that we don't have like 3 jams in one night, because that is something that happens a lot on weekend, kind of over planning. We want to make sure all events are kind of spread out so that everyone has the chance to kind of go to everything. So that's what we'll do then, and then we'll have another support session on the annual budget system. So this won't be so much training as it will just be kind of answering specific questions, looking over your budget. So it'll be much more specific at that point. And then the last thing is the budgets will be due. So you really have 2 months to work on this. So you don't have to stress. It's a really long amount of time to be working on it. You'll get the chance to work on it with your new executive officers as well, which should be very different and exciting. And then come April 22nd, we will email every single treasurer and let you know what your budget is for the upcoming year, which has never been done before, because we really understand the importance of you guys knowing what your finances are coming into the upcoming fall semester. And we want to make sure that you guys have enough time to plan ahead with the budget that you guys are given, as well as talk to us and ask us, why did you give us this amount? Give us any new information and things like that.
Our training sessions in February 4.
Yes. But again, emails will be out. You don't have to memorize any of this, so I'll be in touch with you guys a lot. So please do read my emails. They are super important. They have a lot of really important information. As well as just to let you guys know, so even though we do have these sessions, that doesn't mean that you can't ever come. We have our office hours, so you have questions before that. After that, please feel free to come to us. Our door is always open.
So here's an example of an annual budget that you might submit. It's similar to a regular budget that you'd submit for a funding request, except that this will have all the events that you plan for the year, not just one event. So you have things like what the event is, when it is, how many people you expect, and then most importantly, what items you're going to be needing and how much is it going to cost. So same with the funding request. We ask that you're very detailed and descriptive with this so that we know exactly what you're getting, we know that you've planned this out, and we know that you're getting the items that you actually need, and I'm saying more or less. And then you just have the total for each event, and then your ultimate total for the year is what you'll request from us.
Yeah.
So this is the annual budget we'll submit to you for funding request for next year.
Yeah, exactly. So when I send out the email Monday, it'll have an example of this, but it will just be blank, and you guys can fill it out over the 2 months. Then you'll email it back to me, and then the finance committee will look over all the budgets.
Yeah. And do
Love
the
the
events
questions.
have to be set in stone?
Yes, great question. Michael, we actually prepared this, so do you want to take it away with the answer?
That you need to have the events on a certain, because we're having the calendar event.
Yes.
So at the calendaring event is when all the clubs are going to get together and are going to decide exactly what days they're going to have events on. You don't need to know exactly what event it's going to be. You're just going to pick out individual days to have the events on. You reserve days that you're going to have events so that we have a good spread of events all throughout the year.
Yeah, so the idea is that you do have a pretty good sense at this point because you'll have had 2 months and you'll be talking to the new officers, so you should have a pretty good sense at this point of what your events are going to be for the upcoming year. But that doesn't mean that new events can't come up. Like, I think a question that I know I would have if I was a treasurer, does this mean I can't submit any funding requests if we create a new event? No, that's not what it means. It just means that we want you guys to be organized, know exactly what your events are, what your financial needs are. And of course, if you guys come up with an event, we want you to apply for more funding. We just kind of really want to decrease the amount of funding requests that you guys need to apply for because it takes a lot of time on your part and our part, and we want to make sure that we have more time to support you and just help you generally with your finances and budgeting and everything like that. Yeah, Dalton.
So also with this new calendar, make sure you're thinking about your big public events. Don't worry too much about your individual club meetings. In-club events aren't that big, but make sure particularly your large public events you have planned and ready. That's really what we're worried about here.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks, Dalton. Any other questions? Yeah, Janila.
So that big calendar, are we putting out events for, is it for the whole year, so both spring and the fall?
Yeah, so it is going to be for both spring and fall. It's a really great question. Yeah, so like here you can see this would be like a fall event, and then this one would be like a spring event. And then obviously, you know, we are asking for itemization, but you know, like if you don't necessarily know, like whether you're gonna get pizza or popcorn, it's not a super big deal. It's just kind of like ballparking what you think you would need. Yeah,
Is there any cap on how much money we can apply for?
No, there isn't. We just ask that you guys are obviously responsible about it. We don't want to see you guys asking for $20,000 when you only need 500. You know, so this is why we want to have such a specific budget, because we really do want to make sure that you guys are only asking for what you need and not more or less, because we want to make sure you guys aren't running into debt, but we also want to make sure that you guys aren't going over and having surplus at the end of the school year, because that money does not cycle back into your account. So, yeah. Any other questions? These are all really great, so thanks, guys. Yeah, Sydney.
What about the money that we make through fundraising? Would that stay in our
That's a great question. So any fundraising money does roll it over into your account, so you don't have to worry about that at all. Yeah, it's just really any money that's given from SGA. Okay, any other questions? And if you guys think of other questions later, feel free to ask. So benefits, so I've pretty much gone over most of them. I think the whole idea with this process is we really want to make sure that like we're supporting you significantly better than we have in the past, and we also really want to make sure that you know what your budget is before the school year ends. The other thing is with the transition and the e-boards, we really want to make sure that new treasurers are being kept in the loop, that they feel like they're having a say in what their budget looks like, and so that we can be so much more accurate with our finances, and that you guys are applying for exactly the amount you need, as well as the fact that we want to make sure that everybody is applying for an annual budget. So typically in the past, SGA is a system where if you don't apply for an annual budget, you just get 100. And what typically happens is that club applies for 10 different funding requests throughout the year. And they typically miss the important deadlines and things like that, and it becomes really challenging. So we really want to make sure that we're trying to mitigate that issue as much as possible and know that you guys are pretty much set up before summer even starts for your upcoming year. Yeah. So does anyone have any more questions as of right now? Okay. Oh, yeah, Jessica.
So, we have to have our officers elected by like that sort of February 20th, March 6th time?
Yeah, so you have about 2 to 3 weeks time frame. We're not asking you to pick a specific date. What we'll do is SGA will be sending out an email, probably from me, giving you a sign-up sheet. So you'll just put the day that your e-board has decided to do your elections. Obviously, they're closed or open depending on your constitution. So you guys will do your e-board elections, and then what will happen is we'll give you guys transition notes and stuff like that. So we really want to make sure that we're not just telling you to do the elections, but then not giving you any support with that process.
And I have another question.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm asking so many,
No,
but I'm
this is good.
sure other clubs have this issue. What if, let's say, one of your officers that's coming in for the next semester is elected but is abroad right now? So, like, for example, we Access would potentially run into an issue where one of our officers who wants to run for president is currently abroad in Copenhagen. So what do we do about that?
That's an awesome question. Yeah, that's no problem at all. You know, study abroad people. We don't want to say you can't run to be on a board. That would be ridiculous. So of course you can run, and we recognize that it will just make the transition process a little bit more difficult. I think what we would ask is just that, you know, the rest of the new e-board members just really make sure that they are going through with that transition process. And in trying to include that person that is in study abroad and make sure that they're also happy to stay. Yeah.
And if we want to keep our e-board, do we, like, we're not planning on having an elections, can we just submit who we have on the e-board right now?
Yeah,
To
we
that
would probably just do that. Are you guys not running elections, or is it like done and dusted?
We kind of, like, we select people who we think are gonna be good on the
Oh,
e-board,
okay.
and then we ask them, and then they accept,
Okay.
kind of thing.
That makes a lot of sense. I would then just say when you do get the email asking clubs to sign up and pick a day for their elections, just write back and be like, okay, like we have a slightly different process that like doesn't really require us to do elections. Yeah, Tapiwa.
Okay, so I don't really know how to phrase this question.
Yeah, just throw it out.
Alright, just throw this out. Anyways, it's about, when it comes to new clubs,
Yeah.
in a club that's setting up, maybe it's an upcoming club or a club that literally starts in the spring, like how they'll go about the, because I know even if they're a new club, they should have some rough estimate of like their budget, but I know it would be different in terms of like the big events, because potentially they wouldn't have any big events to plan for, because they haven't maybe checked them out and see what works and what doesn't work. So in the process of like them being super prepared and like filling up all these calendars and meeting all these deadlines, how is that gonna work? Like I said, the question I don't really know how to phrase it well, but something along those lines.
Yeah, I totally get your question. Are you talking about a club that's gone through the approval process within SG or
both.
that hasn't?
So both. I would
Okay.
say one that has maybe gone through that, maybe they're still within the process, right?
Yeah.
So they're not quite there yet, but they're
Definitely.
within the process. Then maybe one that's actually starting fresh, like starting from fresh.
Okay, cool. So I'll answer your question. If you aren't through the SGA approval process yet, you're what we call college recognized. So that means that you're more than able to apply for discretionary funding, but you wouldn't apply for an annual budget anyway. Dalton and Michael, correct me if I'm wrong. So that kind of answers your question. So they wouldn't be applying for an annual budget, so it doesn't matter anyway. In terms of being a new club, yeah, that is really tricky, and I totally understand what you're saying. In regards to that, I would definitely say reach out to us, have a conversation with us, and we can hopefully work out like a rough idea of your budget and a rough idea of events. So with the calendaring day, you're not married to the event. If you do need to change it, if the date doesn't work, something happens, that's fine. But with the budget process, yeah, it's kind of one of those kind of unavoidable things. I mean, Michael, I don't know if you have any suggestions.
I just add that, like, again, you're not prevented from creating new events after the calendaring event. So even for a club that's forming after the calendaring event or isn't able to get off the ground after the calendaring event, you're still able to create events and apply for funding later in the year, during the year.
Yeah, and just obviously like just reach out to us, like we will help you and we want to help you with that. And you know, obviously we're going to be lenient. We know this is new, so we're not expecting it to be perfect this year. Yeah. Okay, so before all of you go, we have a fun game because who doesn't love chocolate? So I don't know, maybe some of you don't like chocolate. So we're just gonna ask you. Oh yeah, Hope.
Sorry, I just have one more question.
Yeah.
So my club doesn't really have any like set annual events that we do.
Okay.
We kind of just like do them like this sounds like a good idea. Let's do it in a couple weeks. So I'm not really sure like how I would apply for funding if we don't have like any annual events that we always do and like know how much costs.
What club are you?
Physics and astronomy club.
Okay.
Would it be possible to still like, you don't even have to know what the event is. You can just say,
Like this day we're doing something.
let's plan for October, you know?
Yeah, the only thing is I wouldn't know like how much money that would be.
Right. You could give it's still just a ballpark. You could just give like usually our events go for this much, so plan for this much, and
Okay.
we'll be lenient, because
Yeah.
the important thing is communication still. Like, again, we only know what you tell us, so when you tell us, like, okay, we don't usually do events in this fashion, so we're lenient, and we will.
Cool.
Are your events more club events or are they events open to the public?
I mean, they're public events, but they're like department. Like nobody in the English department is gonna want to come see like people from the physics club like talk about stars. Like no, like, so it's more like things that we send to our club members that are open to the public. Like we poster and stuff, but like it's mostly people from our club going to our events. If that makes any sense. I don't know if
Yeah,
that
I
makes
mean, I
any
think,
sense.
yeah, we'd encourage organization because it's always easier and better, but I understand. Yeah, like,
I don't know if this question makes sense, but does the annual budget anticipate purchase requests or funding requests?
funding request,
Okay.
great question. Dalton, you can talk about why you would do purchase request. No, it's only funding requests, so this is just like getting money from SGA and not like how do you use it or how do you get reimbursed or anything like that. Yeah. Dalton, do you want to speak really quickly about a purchase
Yeah.
request so that people just know the difference?
So hello. So the other form that was brought up a little earlier was a purchase request. So that's for money that has already been spent and you're reimbursing a club. You're paying a contract for a group coming in. You're paying an invoice for a service you've requested, something like that. We'll have actually a training session next week on how to do those. So you should have just got those in your email if you're on an exec board or you're the president, primary contact, or treasurer. Don't confuse our two training sessions. We'll both have multiple over the year, but pay attention to who's sending them. If they come from me or Victor, then they are for banking. If they come from Sierra, they are for funding. So other than that, I'm going to be around at various events today, so afterwards, if you have other individual questions for me, the banker, please feel free to ask those.
Yes.
So just a question for Dawson. So for the purchase request, it's, correct me if I'm wrong, it's mostly money that you already have in your budget, and you
Yes.
just wanna pay for like invoices and like.
Yep.
Alright,
So that should all be money that's already in your account before you even think about going to spend it.
okay.
Okay, so game time. So the first question, and whoever answers this gets a chocolate. I love it. Okay, so who applies to SAF? So that's the student activity fee. Yeah.
The treasurer applies and an SGA club would apply to the venture fund if they're doing something transportation related.
Okay, but when would you apply for SAF?
Oh,
Sorry. First question.
who applies?
Yeah,
Yeah, the treasurer of the club.
right, but would it be like an SGA club? Would it be like a college recognized club? Could it just be a bunch of students that want to do an event?
No, it's college recognized, they have to be part of SGA.
Perfect. Okay. All right. So the next question, which Ben kind of answered, but just again, so when would an SGA recognized club apply for venture fund? Jessica.
For travel expenses for a bus or the train to get to a place.
Perfect. Okay. The next question is how do you oh, sorry, Michael, let's
No, okay.
go.
How do you submit a funding request?
For the finance tab on the page. And then you fill out.
Perfect. Okay, what are the time deadlines for funding requests?
Over $500 is 4 weeks in advance, and under 500 is 2 weeks in advance.
Yes, can you say that again?
Over 500 is 4 weeks in advance, and under 500 is 2 weeks in advance.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay, the next question is what is one of the new resources available to club treasurers this year? Yeah, Tapiwa.
The finance page with all the documents and presentations are.
Awesome. Okay. Last question is what is one of the new benefits of the new annual budget system? Henry.
You guys built us a budget template?
Sorry, what? I didn't
You
hear.
guys built us a budget template, like a whole thing that we could fill out.
Okay, thanks a lot, guys. If you have individual questions, feel free to ask. But thank you so much for taking your Friday out. Thank you.